Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to be going over some deck list options for you to take to the historic qualifier play-in as well as the play-in weekend on MTG Arena, or qualifier weekend. It's the best of three on Friday, qualifier play-in. If you get in, then the actual qualifier is on Saturday. Best of three formats for both. The best of one was last week, and it is the historic format. So we're going to go over some deck lists that have been putting up good results on the ladder up to this point. And then we will also I'm going to go over what I'm going to be playing most likely, just from the decks I've been kind of going over. So we're going to get the data from Untapped, what you see on the screen. Companion tool runs alongside Arena Client, tracks win rates, aggregates it for both yourself to see what your stats are, like we'll see with my deck that I've been practicing, and then gives us kind of a meta snapshot. If you want to get started with Untapped, the link is in the video description down below. And then just before we go into it, I am very close to 9,000 subs onto YouTube. I have a goal by the end of June to hit 10,000. So if you haven't subbed to the channel, free, easy, helps with the channel. If you have already done, likes and comments go a long way. If you're consuming content from any creator, like literally just press the like button. It helps a lot, costs you nothing, and it helps us kind of keep pushing out more content. So we are looking June 1st through June 8th, Platinum to Mythic rank, 13,000 games. Of best of three were played. Top performing deck is Azorius Affinity. It was a really blue-white affinity, 64%. So there's a lot of decks in that, like, a mass of like 60%. Historic is like modern in the sense that if you have a deck that you're very versed with, it goes a long way. There's kind of natural counters to everything for the most part. Like Crucius is kind of an outlier, but having familiarity with a deck goes a long way. So the core of this deck, and a lot of the artifact decks in the sense, is Retrofitter Foundry. So there's a blue-white version of the deck, which we see here. There's a red-white version that's generally more prominent in best of one. It's a bit more aggressively slanted, but I like the blue-white version probably better for best of three because it's a little bit more resilient and has interaction against counterplay a little bit better. But the core is Retrofitter Foundry. For the last mode, sacrifice a Thopter, create a 4/4 colorless construct artifact creature. So on turn one, you can play the Retrofitter Foundry, play an Ornithopter, sack the Ornithopter on your opponent's end step, get a 4/4, and start beating down. It's also a very good mana sink in grindier games to just keep creating tokens. You also have Hope of Girapur, which is a Thopter that you can sacrifice as well. And with the deck, you're kind of playing a bunch of artifacts. So Esper Sentinel is a very good tax effect. You play this on one, kind of screws up your opponent's curve, or forces them to give you card advantage. Portable Hole as catch-all removal. There's a lot of kind of Lurrus shells, stuff like that. This being said Lurrus shell. We'll go to kind of the buffs in a sec. Ingenious Smith is card advantage, helps you find key pieces in the deck, including 4 of lands in Darksteel Citadel. It gets bigger each turn cycle in which a artifact enters the battlefield. So with Retrofitter Foundry, you can create tokens on your opponent's turn and then get an extra counter on Ingenious Smith, which is nice. The Ingenious Smith is also good because it's not an artifact. So Brotherhood's End hurts the deck a lot, but with Ingenious Smith, they can't just name destroy all artifacts. They do have to name the creature side at times too. So it does help you play around that. Innovative Metatech is another creature, so whenever one or more artifact creatures you control deal combat damage to the player, you get to seek a non-land card with mana value 2 or less into your hand. So this is kind of like a circumvented draw. Imagine it like tutors a random 2-drop or less from your deck, so it's always drawing you gas, not lands. So it has, like, late game, it's good because you just want to keep more cards that actually play to the board. This, if you're struggling on lands, will not find you the lands, unfortunately. And then you have Vault Scourge. So this is where the black elements come. You're really just casting this for 1 and 2 life. So this is a flying life linker, so an evasive body that can gain you life. And it can get buffed in various ways to kind of push through damage. The ways you buff in this deck is in Soul Artifact, gives creature base 5/5 power. So you can have like a 5/5 flying life linker. You can also equip it onto the Darksteel Citadel because it's any artifact. So this is an indestructible 5/5 then. And then you also have Mashiko, Reign of Truth, that gives a buff to various creatures based on the count of artifacts and enchantments, and then itself flips into a pretty chunky creature at times. So with this deck here, the big reason I think this version is probably better for best of three, you have card advantage between Innovative Metatech, Ingenious Smith, and Esper Sentinel. So you're a little bit less playing in. You tend to see more all in approaches, more divine purges, Brotherhood's End. So you want to avoid the all-in approach. So you have Metallic Rebuke, which is a counterspell, which can be basically a 1-mana mana leak in this deck by tapping down miscellaneous artifacts, things like Portable Hole or like a random art creature that you have. Hushbringer shuts off any of the enter the battlefield style effects. So things like if you incidentally run into angels, or if there's like a goblin into the battlefield, or some of the mono green creatures that enter the battlefield, like Cavalier of Thorns kind of works in that regard. It also shuts off any of the like enchantment based removal. Or actually no, this one doesn't. This is Hushbringer. It's not this one's only creatures. Sorry, not like the Elish Norn style effect. Glass Casket has more removal, and then 2 pieces of Graveyard Hate and Tormod's Crypt, and Soul Guide Lantern as well. From there, we go to Azorius Control, 63%. So there's a couple different versions of Azorius Control. There's like the Snapcaster version. There's the sometimes Zerda, but otherwise the Kalim, like 30 land special, tap your things down version. And then there's sometimes a Yorion version, which is usually the least seldom that you see. I believe this version is Mistman's version. Most likely Mistman. If you see Exclude in a deck, it's Mistman's deck. Very good control player. So with this version here, you are basically playing a bunch of sweepers. Divine Purge is very good against these low to the ground Luris decks and artifact decks. Supreme Verdict as well as Farewell. Snapcaster lets you flash back. There's also the interaction with Divine Purge that you exile your Snapcaster to rebuy it. While it is taxed 2 mana, you get to cast it again later in the game. Change the Equation is really well slotted into the meta, counters early drops or like any of the Luris shells, counters everything out of the deck other than Luris itself. And then against the big mana decks or Crucius or like Mono Green can hit all those threats as well. Smattering of Removal, Fragment Reality, March of the Otherworldly Light. We have like Card Advantage and Memory Deluge. Archmage Charm can be a counter or card draw. And then Teferi as well as Wandering Emperor is your primary win conditions. You can technically beat down with Snapcaster Mage as well as Castle Ardenvale or the Hall of the Storm Giants. Your sideboards just got situational answers, so Relic of Progenitus for Graveyard Hate, Devout Decree versus like Rakdos based decks, Vetoed Dispute for like the Control Mirrors, Narset comes in Control Mirrors, or decks that are looking to draw a lot of cards, Teferi versus like Counterspell decks, Verdict is a sweeper. Against more aggressive decks, you have Boonbringer Valkyrie, which is basically like your Baneslayer Angel, but what's nice with it is if you already have a creature, you can put backup abilities on that other creature first to get in an earlier attack. And then you have Shark Typhoon for like the control mirrors, heavy counterspell mirrors. From there, we go to Gruul Goblins, 62% win rate. So this is more of a combo Goblins deck. There's a couple different versions. There's the Rakdos like Crucius to always find Muxus version. There's like the grindier mid-range one with like the goblins that you can sack to like drain your opponent. There's like you don't see it as often now, but the mono red Ironcrag feed into Muxus version. This one is playing around with Cabaretti Revels. So Cabaretti Revels, whenever you cast a creature spell, you basically almost like pseudo cascade in a way. You seek a card with lesser mana value, put it onto the battlefield. So with the combination of things like Goblin Anarchomancer, as well as Goblin Influx Array, which offset the casting cost, using things like Skirk Prospector to generate mana, and then like Goblin Instigator, if you cast it for 1 mana, it makes 2 bodies, so you can net 1 mana. Wily Goblin, you can cast it for 2 mana, makes a treasure, you can sack it, it pays for itself in a way. You can kind of churn through your deck. You also have the ability with a Goblin Trap Finder to get that reduced cost and tutor as well. And then with Palishman, whenever a creature dies, you can deal 1 damage to any target. Sometimes, if you play Squee the Immortal in this deck, you can actually, if you get its cost low enough, you can go infinite and cast, basically churn through your whole library because you can keep casting it from your graveyard. So that's kind of a cool interaction there. So you can kind of ping in, you could just amass like really wide board states playing through a lot of your deck. The Ruveneld Horde Master is a way to, when you sack a creature, you can reveal and try to get more value, but basically you're going to get out a few lords, get out some hasty creatures, and try to smash in your opponent. So you can go from like no board state to like crazy board state. I find this version harder to play than the Rakdos version. If you want to see a demo, I played this during the metagame challenge. Slightly different version. I was playing more Influx Array main for like the grindier matchups. We were playing against a lot of Rakdos in like sweeper decks, like heavy removal. And then I was playing the Squeeze Immortal version. But you can see it there. Your sideboard, Graveyard Hate, just cheap removal, Artifact Enchantment Hate, Graveyard Hate. If there's like Sarah Paragon, the Stomp gets around it. Brotherhood's End for the artifact deck. You can name artifacts while keeping yours. Gem Palm Incinerator is actually a way you can kill Atraxa. You go fairly wide with this deck, but it's like uncounterable removal. Palishman is another just kind of pinger. Squee for the grindier matchups, and Trashmaster for artifacts. You then go to Orzhov Humans. This is a list from Alth. A lot of these lists are from Alth. Plays a lot of historic, very good content creators, so check them out. So this is a Lurrus Humans companion deck. 1 and 2 drops only, so very low to the ground aggressive kind of pseudo taxing style effect. So protection and Dauntless Bodyguard, the taxes we mentioned in the artifact deck with Esper Sentinel. Hopeful Initiate grows larger and can be artifact enchantment removal. Portable Hull is removal. Recruitment Officer is a 2/1 that could be a mana sink to get you some card advantage. Coppercoat Vanguard gives you a +1 power and all your creatures ward in the deck, which is nice. Then you have a couple of new cards. The Arena, it gives all, so it could come in and exile something from a graveyard right away, which is nice. You can pick off like an Atraxa, Burial Rites, miscellaneous graveyard value card, and then you could sacrifice it. Your creatures gain hexproof and indestructible to end the turn. So while it doesn't play around like Divine Purge, Supreme Verdict, any targeted removal, stuff like that, so you can kind of protect your spell. It also gives you a nice turn where you can like alpha attack, protect your board, and then kind of trade with your opponent's creatures. Juggernaut Peddler is an alchemy card, but it's really cool design space. It's kind of like a pseudo Thoughtseize on a creature, but instead of just discarding the card, you give them a Juggernaut instead. So while they do get like a 5/3 for 4 mana, it's often much worse than the card that you're taking out of their hand. Also, just like low-key having Vigilance is really nice, especially because there's so many ways to buff in this deck between like various copies of Coppercoat Vanguard, as well as Thalia's Lieutenant, to buff up your team. And then lastly, you have Sigardia Evangel. So this card comes in, it taps down something, and then lets you conjure another copy to your hand that you can then, so if you have a lot of mana, like every interval of 2 mana gets you another copy onto the battlefield. This is really good in the late game because you could tap down a bunch of blockers and attack in, and then whatever last copy you have in your hand that you can't cast gets discarded at the end step, but then when you cast Lurrus, you can get it out of your graveyard as well. So this kind of helps break board spells. Your sideboard, Tormod's Crypt for Graveyard Hate along with Soul Guide Lantern, more removal and Portable Hull. Against monocolor decks, you can just do like Brave the Elements for protection, and then go for an unblockable attack. Cathar Commando for Artifact Enchantment Hate. Containment Priest for any of like the Reanimator shenanigans. Dire Tactics is general removal, and against control you have Thalia. Excuse me. So then we have the 5-color Domain Reanimator. So this is a deck that Binary Soloist on Twitter was working on a lot, and some folks have picked up. So it's got some weird cards in here. And there's a couple different versions of the deck and adaptations. So you got Slimefoot Thallid Transplant. So 2 mana 2/2, whenever a forest or a swamp enters the battlefield, you draft a card from its spellbook. So it basically gives you a bunch of like fungus and sapperling style cards. You have a lot of triomes and shocklands, which can then help you get this ability. But it gives you a lot of ammunition and kind of virtual card advantage to discard to Crucius. A lot of the versions, and we'll take a look in a sec at kind of another variation, are also playing Slimefoot and Squee, which lets you sack sapperlings to reanimate. So it's a way to like backdoor cheat into play Atraxa. And it's kind of like those random goblins for 3 mana that when they attack, they make like Legion War Boss or something like that. It's like the fungus version of that. But the deck's playing Domain, so you got all 5 colors. You get Territorial Kavu, which can become a 2 mana 5/5 with upside. Lightning Helix, Fatal Push, Leyline Binding, all this removal. Fable kind of pieces together the deck. You have Reanimation with Burial Rites for the Atraxa. Hellish Norn shuts down enter the battlefield style abilities. And then doubles yours, so like double Leyline Binding, for example. Double Atraxa draw. Jenga the Companion, Thoughtseize for hand hate, change the equation as counters, Rest in Peace for graveyard hate, Deafening Clarion as a sweeper, another Fable for the grindier matchups, and an Elesh Norn. Really good against, for example, like Goblins or something like that. So then we have Alts list. You got number 1 Mythic with this version. So I'll link this as well. So this is a Jund version, so a little bit cleaner mana base, but using the squeeze. Slimefoot and Squee, so Slimefoot's abilities, you can sacrifice the Saproling, return Slimefoot and Squee, and up to 1 other target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery. So it's like a backdoor way to reanimate. You have Mutavault, which can be in a pinch be used to create Saprolings as well. You got Shieldred's Assimilator for like graveyard hate, bunch of discard, Bloodtithe Harvester package, and Attracts as your payoff. Hand hate, Visagi's like Artifact Enchantment hate, bunch of removal, and then like Elesh Norn for ETB effects. We then go to Mono Green Devotion. This is also another Alt list. So this version here, we have access to Leyline of Abundance in Historic, which is banned in Pioneer. This doubles adds an additional mana for each like creature tapping for mana. So you have 12 1-mana dorks to accelerate you. You have Nykthos for mana sink. And then Kiora for like the untapped shenanigans, similar with Karn, your Cavalier. So a lot of similarities. Turn Timber can be a tutor effect. You have Forceful Cultivator, which lets you tutor for lands, costs less if you don't have lands in hand. Grizzled Huntmaster lets you discard a creature from your hand and then like tutor a creature from your sideboard. So if you draw like late game elves, you can kind of upgrade them. The sideboard, bunch of like one of artifacts they can tutor with Karn in different situations, and then your creature tutors are like Elder Gargaroth, Questing Beast, Voracious Hydra, Ooze, or you can also tutor the Revoker or Haywire Mite. So it's really like a kind of pseudo toolbox devotion shop. And then lastly, so this is the deck I've been playing a bit offline and online. So I started with the list, the Rakdos list, the Chandra Invoke one that I got 7 wins with during the metagame challenge. I found it a little clunky in some matchups. While Invoke is fairly powerful, you lose some of the card advantage elements, and I really like Seasoned Pyromancer. So I'm 10-4 with this list here. The mirrors could be a little iffy. I was losing to like the Atraxa ones, but I've also been trying out like a bunch of different cards in here. Kind of just going through, like what did I lose to? Like I bet you could see I've been trying to play a bunch. Like the thing is, people cheating into play various like Atraxa piles has been a little rough. This version just like the Chandra Torch of Defiance just absolutely rocked me. So we tried that, and then I lost to Is It Phoenix that they drew pretty well post board. But yeah, just been kind of playing around. So it's your Crucius pile, just clean numbers, like full 4 Fable. I really like Seasoned Pyromancer. Just gives you so much card advantage. I've been playing around with like optional 5-drops. So I've gone back and forth with like Shieldred main, side. I've tried that's probably an older version. Yeah, sorry. I'm on the Chandra main. So you can see I've been trying out different things. Chandra main helps with like card advantage, the mana. Because what often happens with these Crucius piles, you get to about 3 lands and then you just start discarding stuff. So the Chandra plus for mana is really good. The Shieldred in here, one of Croxa, one of Molten Impact, one of Prey. So like I got a bunch of situational removal. And then we kind of tailor it. Cling to Dust main has been really nice. It's something you can discard to Crucius with like card advantage. But it could also pick off like the reanimation target, stuff like that. It's life gain and it's virtual card advantage that could be repeatable from your graveyard. So I really like this deck. My sideboard's kind of been tweaking numbers here and there, but Go for the Throat is just more removal. Shelly's Edict for just like grindier matchups. Graveyard Hate and Licensors. Go Blanks for discard. Brotherhood's End for artifact enchantment hate. Hitizuku for like the very low to the ground aggro decks. Kolaghan's Command for 2-for-1 value, Extinction Event for the mono green matchup, or like the big decks. Invoke Despair for the mirror, or like Control, stuff like that. Shieldred could also come in the mirror, or like Bant Hammer sometimes, just like because they have Invisible Stalker, you need more Edict style effects. And then Chandra comes in against any of the counterspell based matchups. But this is probably what I'm going to play. I've been liking the deck. Well, I've lost a couple games with it. I feel like it's got answers to everything. Crucius is the best card in the format, and I really like Season Pyromancer, so I'm going to play Season Pyromancer. This card's so cool and like such a well-designed card that rewards you. So just play busted cards, play Thoughtseize is gonna be my approach. Hope that I don't get killed by Atraxis. In any case, gonna wrap this one up. Let me know what you're playing, and good luck in the event.